fucking don't get it. So then I was like, I got to make this simple. So then, working with Starbucks app, you go to the point of sale and you put $10 on the Starbucks app, and then you buy it from there. But then if you just talk through the benefits of that using a familiar example, that's when the lights came on. People are like, oh shit, that actually works. And it's like what I guess my point is that the way I see it is that it's been hundreds of years that people have relied upon the state, and they have lost a muscle memory that is still there. They just need to tap into it, right? So, that's the trick. Is it's not that the technology is missing, and it's not that the ideas are missing. It's sort of like there seems to be the resistance to change just based on, I don't know, I don't know what it is, inertia or some shit, but how do we break it? How do we break it? We have to provide discrete examples that are bite-sized and accessible. And that's what Michael and I were talking about is, there was some discussion about maybe presenting the results of whatever we agreed to do at the advocacy panel during Anarchapulco, and just, demonstrating to them. Actually, Joe was talking about anarchy in action. Just demonstrate to them that it's not completely crazy or hard to do. I mean, what we're talking about is the smallest things. Like, Kieran, what you're talking about is eminently achievable. It's right there. Jesus, if you got some of the best soil on earth sitting under your nose, why aren't you using it, right? And so, like, I think that's our opportunity, is we could come up with some really discrete, bite-sized examples and really help. It's like they're under a spell, they're under a trance, right? Like they don't recognize it's right there. And that's actually a good thing. It's not that we're lacking the technology. It's not that we're lacking the ideas. The only thing that's missing, I like this metaphor, and then I'll stop. I come from an area that's full of forest, the entire area, thousands of miles of forest, and everything necessary for an inferno is already inside the forest. The only thing missing is conditions and a catalyst, right? So that's fascinating to me, because it's the same true as society. Everything necessary for a true inferno is already there. And the conditions, and what's missing is a catalyst. We're this far, we're one lightning strike from being able to get ahead of what is going to be a massive disaster. I can feel it. And it's an avoidable one, just based on poor administration. So.
Well, and one of the things too that, because I'm from Iowa, and so one of the things that, I think that the corporatization of food production has actually, it isn't a root cause, it's actually a symptom. And I don't know if Kyron would agree with this, or anyone else from a farming background, is that they're bleeding out farmers. You have, kids in a small town, they do not want to stay in the small town, because what is there for them there? There's a farm, and then there's a dollar store. So there's no opportunities unless they want to farm. So you see these family farms that are being taken over by, corporate ag, and it doesn't matter if it's corn or dairy or soybeans. They're getting overtaken because there's no succession planning. So I think that in order to address some of those causes in terms of keeping affairs and money local, so that there are opportunities, maybe you don't want to be a farmer, but you want to stay with your friends who are farmers. But if there's no job there for you, you're going to move into a bigger city or a suburb of a bigger city where you actually have opportunities to pursue whatever your career path is. So I think addressing one of the root causes of that would be, how do we get, kids interested in farming again and in agriculture? And college is not for everyone. We see that more and more, where corporate job is not for everyone. In fact, most of the kids that I know, I do have a teaching background, they don't want any part of corporate America, but they don't see any alternatives.
Yeah, I've seen that trend that you speak of, Joe, for years. You can look at example like in Cool Hand Luke, right? I remember when he escapes from prison and he's in this ad, and it's him with two very attractive women, and he's in like a whiskey ad. But it got me thinking years and years ago, probably 20 years ago now, about that scene. And that movie, at the time was probably 30, 40 years old. I can't remember when Cool Hand Luke came out.
I think it was probably late 60s.
Right. Yeah. So let's say 68, right? Like, 69. That makes it a 50-year-old movie, right? Mm-hmm. So, we are thinking about that concept. Those ads were put in those magazines to get, the kids that are out in the farm side to come into the city as fodder,
right?
As basically as fodder. And it's been like that since, you know, time for a very long time at this point. And you know, the sort of centralization that you spoke about, Michael, with you know, the farms, we've seen this before. We've seen it in banking, right? Like, you know, there were all these local banks growing up, and now there's none. You know, it's Santander, it's the Hong Kong Bank of China. You know, it's literally the centralization. We've seen it with media, right? Like there's 6 media conglomerates that own basically all the radio, all the TV. YouTube is kind of getting there and trying to run that. We've seen Netflix kind of getting in that space as well. We're just seeing this huge centralization and consolidation of the most important infrastructure and activities that human beings do, and it's becoming very corporatized. And you're absolutely right. We need to. I feel like food production is really the skeleton, the foundation. I think that's why it's been somewhat last, and they've just made it so easy, you know, to get a lot of food cheaply without having to put the labor into it, with the corn subsidies, with big oil, using, you know, the fertilizers and you know, the machines and mechanization. But what happens if we hit peak oil? What happens if there's an interruption in oil prices? That's gonna, you know, fuck corn. That's gonna fuck then beef and everything else that, you know, they put corn into. All the prices are gonna go up because corn is in everything. And so yeah, I mean, you know, that could be the catalyst right there. You know, just, you know, a shock in oil prices could completely create that inferno that you spoke about, Kent. And you know, it's I think from the most basic standpoint, food is the cornerstone of anarchism, of voluntarism, and I think it really should be the focus. I mean, it has, I think, the greatest ability to undermine government at the foundation.
Maybe we could do some sort of distributed organization that competes with the farms, which competes with the large farms, and actually becomes sort of a plug-in mechanism. What I mean, kind of an easy to set up local branch office.
Well, I see Paul had his hand up, so I want to recognize Paul, and then also I want to, you know, we have a weekly innovation lab meeting that we have here, and one of the people that we were talking and is in the meeting today, Tom, has an organic fertilizer concept. So I don't know if Tom wants to talk about that a little bit, but we can throw that in there too. And then I guess, you know, we've been going a little bit over 2 hours now, so I do want to give everybody a chance to take a break. And so maybe we'll have a 5 or 10 minute break at about 5 or 3:30, and then I think Trudy's going to come in, and we can start with her. But Paul, do you want to chime in, or Tom?
Yeah, I can come back on here if I can just. I didn't realize I'd hit the thing to chat, but that to make a comment. But that's great because that was just fantastic. Everything Kieran's been sharing, and the whole conference has been some phenomenal, real practical, applicable solutions. I'm pretty excited about it, connecting with all of you. Yeah, I think a gentleman named Rowan, who did speak in some of the smaller workshops at Acapulco, he's connected with an amazing USA-based cooperative system of local community-based food production and food security, and definitely someone, Kieran, who I'd like to connect you with the work that he's involved with, because and I'm also very much involved with similar movements in Australia. I'm working with the farmers here, and so this is just really great to all learn from each other and see what's working. That's pretty much all I wanted to add.
Michael, it's Colin. Yeah, I just wanted to echo those comments. This has been an amazing call, and it's energizing to hear so many people who are thinking and working on this. And yeah, just that a lot of us are seeing the urgency to do something where we've kind of got these two potential futures, and one is quite dystopian and not positive, and another could be really amazing. And it's just good to know that there are other people working on this, and that you're doing this fantastic work to bring people together and help get them coordinated. So just wanted to say thank you. And it's been amazing to hear you all talk and to meet you guys, and looking forward to connecting again, and looking forward to Anarchapulco 2020, and lots of awesome things that are hopefully going to happen between now and then. I've got to jump off the call now to head back to my internet-free camp that I'm at for the rest of the weekend. But really appreciate being included on this call, and if anybody wants to reach me, email is best, colin@presearch.io. And yeah, looking forward to connecting to everybody through you again, Michael. Thanks again for doing that fabulous work.
It was great, man. I got your email. I was dying to set up a conversation. It was great hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you so much for participating, Colin. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Colin.
Let's see,
My
Joe,
pleasure,
do you
guys.
have,
Thanks.
Joe, do you, can Tom connect through your,
You can take this outside.
Okay, I'm here. Yeah, I came down here with the idea of doing this worm business. It's a worm castings, worm manure. You can see to show the packet here. He's actually out of Wisconsin. But he's got it down to a manufacturing process, and it's pure earthworm castings, and it's 100% organic. That's the top product. But especially want to talk to Paul about this. I think it'd be great to get someone up there. Farmers around here in Mexico, it's like what it used to be in the United States, where it's mostly agrarian, where everybody was farmers. And it's that way in Mexico. I think instead of using pesticides, this would be a great asset to Mexico. For sure.
I don't know if we heard you really well, Tom, but you know, Tom has got a solution in regard to organic fertilizer that is really fairly simple, fairly easy to produce. It really grabs some value because the fertilizer ends up like doubling the size of most of the fruit and vegetables, and so it really it really demonstrates. And it's organic, so there's no chemicals involved. It's basically generated worm manure, but it's a business it's growing in the United States. The people that produce it at the moment, they've got too much business, but it's one of those businesses that doesn't scale well, so like creating a manufacturing plant for it or something is not going to be the solution, but it does scale well when it comes to people in local communities do it, and so it's perfect for something where local people are trying to produce the most amount of food in a very small area. Fertilizer is one of the ways to do that, and so I think it would work well with what Kyron is pitching in regard to, like, people just doing their own local garden. And in regard to that, coming from Gary, I can attest to that, man. When I was a kid, every single neighbor had a garden in, every one of them. And, people would trade, one would grow strawberries, one would grow corn, one would grow green beans, and they'd trade, and we'd say, hey, man, we just brought in all these strawberries here, have a bushel of strawberries. And, but obviously that we don't do that anymore.
No doubt. And not only does that increase your food security, but it also creates a context in which you actually know your neighbor, right? And you have relationships with them, and there's trust there, and you can and like there's so much more that you can leverage off of that, and it just creates a great abundance context, right? Like and to the point about the worm castings, I think that it's a great idea. I actually have a compost pile because I have to pay for trash bags, and here where I live, and the trash bags are $2 a pop, and so why would I put all of this food in the trash, make it stink, and have to take it out and put it in another trash bag? So I just created a compost pile in my backyard. Now, a lot of people who live in apartments don't really have access to be able to do stuff like that in the particular city I live in, right outside of Boston. But in doing my research about creating compost from worms, is that things that metabolize a little quicker than worms are chickens. And not only that, you get eggs that you can eat. Chickens will eat all of your food scraps and process them very quickly, and that can easily be turned into a manure, especially if mixed with things like chipped wood from local tree trimmers, and mix that in and let that compost, it'd become great fertilizer very quickly.
Awesome. All right, well, I guess we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then when we come back, we're going to have Trudy talk to us a little bit more about the 214 alpha method project. I think one of the things that me and Ken had talked about this a little yesterday with Joe, and I think Trudy was in there too, but the idea of creating kind of a mechanism that people can take their skill or ability and turn it into something of value that the rest of the community can identify is probably one of the elements of this in regard to what the 214 alpha concept and platform is about. I don't know. You want to comment on that, Kent or Joe?
Actually, Kent gave me his headphones here, and
Okay.
I think he's working on the laundry because our 214 Alpha office is in the laundry room. I hope the background noise isn't too bad on that because the washing machine is running. But I know you're getting ready to take a break, and then just real quick, I'm going to be giving an overview of our product, which is a mobile application that pre-integrates 7 functionalities in support of establishing a community that keeps its money and affairs within the community. And
whenever you're ready, we can go ahead and
okay, sir.
Crank it up.
Can you do that thing for me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Trudy. I'm the operations manager for 214 Alpha, and I'm just going to go over our main product, which is a mobile application that allows someone who has an idea, hold on, we're working on the sharing, to start a community that allows commerce, trading, bartering, exchange of goods and services within that specific community exclusively. you can create your own community, and you can admit anybody into it that you approve if it's your community. So if you look at this circle, the 7 pre-integrated functions, at 214 Alpha, what we're doing is in the process of developing a application, a mobile application that starts with digital identity, and once you establish a community, as an admin of that community, anybody that's going to be in it has to apply to be in the community and has to pass whatever your requirements are for secure identity. So that's the front line for screening out fake profiles, people who don't have the best intentions, and just really focusing on building a community of people that have a shared value and a shared purpose. The second thing that happens once you're in the app is communication, so that we are creating a communication system within the app. We're not saying go to Facebook. We're not saying go to Telegram or something like that. We're actually trying to create a unique communication system within the community so that people can talk to each other. So the person who is starting the community can put up announcements or define what they're, whoops, hey Kent, I did something. Kent, whoops, sorry, I did something. I don't know what I did. Well, I'm gonna keep talking for a second. Kent, all right, back to this. Sorry, y'all, I'm not very technologically capable. So looking at, I'm an occupational therapist by career, and I'm pretty old too. Everybody says I don't look it, but I'm 62. And anyway, so all this tech stuff is pretty interesting to me, but I do understand it really well. So that's it, because I like communities. I like people to be able to be in charge of their own thing. All right, so people are talking to each other, and then that goes to commerce, which is essentially what we're trying to promote with all the communities. Let's say I have grown some really awesome tomatoes in my backyard garden, and I say to anybody in the community who wants to buy some tomatoes, I'll sell them by the dozen, I'll sell them by a bushel. I have something to sell, and I list my product within the app, and then someone says to me, let's say Michael says, Trudy, those sound amazing. How much do you want for them? And I'm you know, like, well, okay, how about $5 for a bushel basket? We, within the commerce section of the app, we create a contract that's actually logged into the blockchain, and the contract is, I'm the seller, he's the buyer, what are the goods and services that are being discussed, and what's the amount, how are they delivered? Those are like the parts of the contract. It's not complicated, but it is, when it's completed, it is logged onto the blockchain. Then we have within the accounts, we have every member of the community has a wallet, and the community has a wallet. So with every transaction, a small percentage of transaction fees goes back to the community account, and then the buyer and the seller exchange the money or whatever is being used as a currency within the community. The cool thing is it can be almost any kind of currency. It doesn't have to be dollars. I just say dollars because that works. It's what I'm American, so I know dollars. This is a way for the community to start developing revenues, because every transaction they get a fee, a small fee. But bear in mind, this is all happening within the community. So there's no Visa charges, there's no PayPal charges, there's no eBay charges, there's no Amazon charges, there's no taxes on it. It's all happening within the community. So if we go back to looking at communication and identity, whoever's in the community are the ones that are going to be making these exchanges. They're offering what they have, and then people within the community are buying it. They're talking about it in the communication part of the app, and then setting up agreements and contracts, and the banking is all part of the app. And then each transaction that is made between a buyer and a seller is rated. So the reputation function is looking at, you know, someone's being busy in there and selling product. Every transaction is rated, and they start to accumulate a reputation based on the ratings of each transaction. And the community, for instance, can come up with their own rules of rewarding that, perhaps. You know, like somebody's doing a really good job, they have a good reputation, they get X number of tokens or reward value. It's all how you want to set up your community. If there's a complaint or a problem, the arbitration is done digitally. I want to stress this part because everybody's like, oh, you know, if I don't get what I paid for, I'm going to sue. Sorry, that's probably not going to happen in our communities because they're not part of a legal system. The community is self-governing, and the first level of arbitration is a digital dispute resolution. You know, you have a problem, you file a complaint, and then that's dealt with inside the app and inside the community. Lastly, kind of obviously, as the community starts to grow, there needs to be some self-governance, and we're really trying to encourage just a different way of looking at things. You know, if the community is focused on trading and purchase of goods and services, it doesn't necessarily, you know, have to look at a lot of other things that might be an issue for a community, like, you know, for instance, public services and, you know, like fire and police and all that. That's literally not part of this community. It's a digital community. So that's it. That's the 7 functionalities of our product. It's a mobile app, and it starts with someone who has an idea, and get people into the community and go from there. I would love questions if anybody wants to ask me.
Well, I'll just start off, I guess, and maybe we can get some more. I do want to acknowledge that Ken from Pompeii has joined us. So
okay,
we will we'll get him to introduce himself here shortly. But you know, we've had a couple discussions about this over the past few weeks. Where would we integrate stuff like if we wanted to do like a time banking type of situation? Would that be something that would be integrated into the application, or is that something?
I've heard you talk about time banking, and if I understand that, that's giving value to time. Like if I donate 5 hours of my time every week to be an admin for a community, then yeah. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. So, well, within the community, you have to put a value. That's a service, okay? So yeah. I'm providing a service. Voluntarism is great, but you know, if in your community you can assign a value, you say, well, Trudy, we can't pay you your usual. Literally, I get $50 an hour for being a therapist. Nobody can afford that. But if right. You know, if you say, well, Trudy, we have our Anarchapulco tokens, and right now we're not sure what value they have, but we're going to honor your contribution as an admin. The time you spend 5 hours a week, we're going to give you 10 tokens an hour and put it in your wallet. So if the community grows and becomes robust, the tokens the community is creating start to have value. And there's even the possibility of them having value outside the community and being sold on the exchange, because that's how it works with cryptocurrency and tokens. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing is in regard to, you know, essentially what Ken represents, Pompeii. You know, Ken has a application that allows local businesses to accept cryptocurrency, and I'll let him explain that. But is that something that could be integrated within this system? Okay.
Mm-hmm. We create a wallet for everybody who's in the community. It's the community wallet. It's not hooked into the outside world, right? But within the community, it works like a regular wallet, and we can design that wallet to manage any kind of currency, which is kind of a cool thing, because I don't have to answer anybody else and their rules or whatever. And we're actually really encouraging communities to start with a familiar fiat currency, like dollars or pesos or whatever's familiar, but also create their own currency in terms of a token, and start assigning tokens and creating a value for the tokens while the trading of goods and services is going on using the fiat currency too. Does that make sense?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So,
Because like I think it's like really asking a lot for people to come into a community and go straight into tokens, and you know.
Yeah, I definitely believe that, like, that's one of the things that makes crypto such a hard thing to adopt is like being able to like figure out like what one thing means versus like, for Acapulqueños, everything is done in pesos, and maybe Ken can chime in on this in regard to the difficulties that the locals have in understanding how they can use crypto. But I think that's one of the things that we have.
That's a lot of background noise.
Is create that kind of circumstance where people have the ability to start to understand what crypto could do for us, because like as you said, like when we can tokenize like the time banking portion of it, then we start
also,
to see how
okay, so like the very next place to go, the time banking, I love that because I want to stress it's not just goods, like your traditional things that a person might buy or sell, but also services can be, given a value, and the community decides that. There would be like regular online discussions within the chat, within the community. Okay, like how are we going to value? What are we going to say an hour of your time is worth if you're doing something for the community? I just saw somebody's toe. Is that Joe? There it is. Okay, hi Joe and your toe. So the community could decide that an hour of time is worth 10 tokens. So but that's how you get started with part of our creating the app is to help the community create a token and mint it, and then be able to put it in people's wallets as a form of trade of a service or even goods. But the next thing is like coming out of the reputation. If someone's getting really busy with their trading and selling and buying, they can get a reward. They'll say, the 50 token bonus for the best sales of the month or whatever, and that goes into their wallet. And at some point, those tokens should start to have real world value. That's kind of the general idea of it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that as people start to realize that the value that backs the currency is actually the value that they create, and that they're essentially printing their money every time they're doing something valuable, and so like the more that they learn, the more skill that they have, the more talent that they show, the more things and people that they can help in their community, the more money they can print for themselves.
So like I'll throw out some examples. Let's say in the community, it's not just business. Like let's say we've got a woman who doesn't work, but she can babysit. And so she says, Monday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, I'm available for babysitting. Who wants me to come over and take care of your kids so you can go out in the town? I charge 10 tokens an hour or whatever. Or she could say, 30 pesos an hour, whatever, or she could say 30 pesos and 3 tokens per hour. Somebody says, I want that service. I want you to come Saturday night so we can go out on the town, me and my wife or whatever. And they make a contract, and it's, the woman is the seller, the couple is the buyer. The terms are, she's going to come over at 6 p.m. to this address, and they're going to pay her 30 pesos and 3 tokens an hour for 5 hours or whatever. And that's registered on the blockchain within the app. The payment goes from their wallet to her wallet, and it can be two different kinds of things. It could be those pesos and the tokens. And so now her wallet has that much more pesos and tokens in it. She can spend the pesos out of her wallet on other things, but she can also accumulate the tokens against a time when they have real world value. It's a lot of strategy. It's almost like, you know, halfway real world money and halfway game money, but the game money has the potential of actually having real world value, and the community is working to decide that. So one of my favorite examples, I'm a therapist and I work with children and I work with seniors that are disabled, and there's a group of individuals, like those individuals who have Down syndrome are often very sweet, pleasant people. They may not even be super verbal or whatever, but being around them is a really nice experience. What if we have a Down syndrome adult who lives with their mom, and mom says, you know what? I'm going to offer people in the community to spend an hour with my son at my house and pay him 10 tokens for that hour. And all you're going to do is chill. Just chill and have a good time with my son. That's value for his time. Does that make sense? Joe's giving me a thumbs up. It's all, you're like a very entrepreneurial, you know, like it doesn't have to be, maybe it's one visit a day for that child. He's not working too hard, you know, he's just hanging out with somebody, but that's a person who maybe is kind of high stress or type A, and they come over and they hang out with this kid, and it really makes their life better.
Yeah.
See what I mean? I mean, there's like all kinds of possibilities once the community starts going, you know.
Well, and it shows that every community member is valued, and that's extremely
Yeah.
important when you're talking about a community. They all have to have like that feeling that they're contributing something, that they are a part of something that's larger than themselves. Otherwise, no one would join communities.
Well, that's one of the things about the time banking, and I think there is kind of the concept that like everybody's hour is the same, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when people donate 2 or 3 hours and they get the, you know, recognition of those hours, and then they're you know, so they get essentially paid a recognition of hours, and then they turn around and they say, okay, well, I need an hour of somebody's time to, you know, to paint my house or something like that, or 2 hours or
Exactly. Yeah.
Those recognition of hours, whether they're a doctor or a painter or a babysitter, it gives people a different perspective on everybody has value,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that time value is different than money value. And so I think the time banking thing is something that does need to be explored at a much greater level, because I think that we really do start to get away from, or at least get a different perspective on everything having the same kind of monetary value, or, you know, like having a monetary value comparison versus just having, you know, like I'm giving 2 hours a week to my community, you know.
Joe,
So like if I'm a doctor, or if I'm if I'm a person that mows lawns, if I'm giving 2 hours away to the community to do that, but then I get to spend 2 hours, you know, maybe I need to go to the doctor or something like that, and so that gives me that opportunity to do that.
it does. And I'm going to go back and say it again. Every transaction is registered on the blockchain and rated for reputation. So
Yeah.
this is like a pretty unique and valuable concept, because most people give away their time and nobody knows. Like nobody knows, oh, hey, this person's doing a lot of community service, but there's no record of it, right? And so within the app, there's a record of it because it's happening as a transaction. Joe, you had a question?
Well, my mind just keeps spinning with all of this. Trudy, I don't know if you heard about some of the other stuff I was talking about before, just rewarding acts of charity.
Yeah.
And that becomes building blocks financial system. Like what you're doing with kind of keeping a transaction log. It's about a year and a half ago, I started looking at receipts. And like the universe was telling me, these are really important for some reason, right? And what you're doing is you're creating receipts or transaction log that in the future, we might have a shift in thought about what we are worth, what our time is worth, what our focused intent is worth, and all these types of things. So you might add on into your receipt transactions how many hours were spent, because we might today we might trade with U.S. dollars to settle that transaction. But later on, if we understand that the U.S. dollar was a kind of device that's used to separate us, conquer, divide.
It's not inclusive.
We can go back. I mean, there was some thoughts. Some people actually take all their receipts where they're forced to spend dollars on them. They turn them into the treasury for a tax refund. It's kind of a weird thing, because they're being forced to use a currency against their will. And the other thought was that you can take these. It sounds like a business plan, right? Going back to the babysitting job, where you were talking about ahead of time that they're negotiating this out. They're going to spend 4 hours, and I have to tell you this, that I think that there's value in that. It's almost like setting up a loan with a bank, where they're analyzing, saying, oh yeah, this is a legitimate type of expenditure and all this. Yeah, we'll float money on that, whatever. But I think that at some point that these are going to, what you're building is a financial instrument for this issue of doing babysitting for 4 hours. And at some point, you may find that people are so looking for value, places to put their value, that they may gobble up these financial instruments like crazy. It might even refund them. With my work, I take the idea a step further. It's like if you're, I say, accumulate wealth by reporting good works. And financial instruments are a key to that. So if you can create a financial instrument that's worth 4 hours of babysitting, someone might want to buy it if they think they can later on.
Well, so
liquid.
I'm gonna go back to that circle and say,
thanks.
There isn't a financial institution. There's the banking system within the app, and the first gate is digital identity. And so everybody who's in this community on this app has been admitted by the administrator or the person who is starting the community, and goes all the way around to self-governance. So the community is self-governing. If that woman is an entrepreneur and she wants to sell her whole business, basically she needs to step out of the community and do that. Does that make sense? In the community, she's setting up, say, 4 nights a week, take it or leave it. If I'm fully booked, then maybe I need to franchise myself to my daughter, but that's still all happening within the community. Does that make sense? I think it's like a really insulating barrier against traditional kinds of intrusions into what people are doing. It's a self-governing community, and there's everybody in there. Let's say there's 100 people in there, there's 200 people in there. They're always talking to each other about what's going on. There's through the reputation system, through the self-governance system, like the community might say, hey, we're having a problem here with somebody seems to be jacking up their prices here. We don't think it's reasonable. Can we have a vote in our community? It's only those people in that community who are making that decision. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
I'm
and
not sure if that answers your
that's
question or not, but
essentially you're describing a tool that's not necessarily exclusive to every situation, but is certainly a function and something that's available to be used for people that are within the community.
mm-hmm.
Well, what it
But
does is it actually provides a digital solution for applied anarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Joe.
Absolutely.
The
All right, I want
community makes
to.
its own decisions and choices about how it wants to execute anything. And if somebody in the community isn't working well, then they can just be put out of the community. It's not like you're asking them to move out of town. It's a digital community, you know.
Yeah.
Joe, did I answer your question well?
Well, sure. It wasn't. It was more of a suggestion. Like you might give some consideration on down the road, like who would be the beneficiary of these transactions, and who would be because as they're paid off. Oh, I don't want to get into it too deep.
Basically, right now, I think the things that you're saying are definitely all things that we're considering. We don't actually want to. We want to get people started. We want to stay with them through the process of building a community, but we really don't want to tell them how to do it because the governing factor comes in.
You're creating coins. You're creating tokens. Now, who gets the tokens? Does the babysitter? Babysitter gets paid some fiat dollars. Is the babysitter the one who receives the tokens?
That would be something that would be something actually that would be contract specific, and it's also a portion of what's built into the governance model to provide for succession planning, not just for individuals, but for any product services. If they're somebody wants to continue on, pick up where somebody left off, those would all be in the governance section.
It's up to each community to decide how they want to make that all work. We have a lot of ideas that we would suggest, but this has not been done. So it's almost like you got to start a community and get things going and see how it works.
Yeah, and I think just having a kind of a baseline for like an organizational model that allows for things like all kinds of different things, effectively contracts between people to be settled. It doesn't necessarily have to mean any particular thing, but the fact that like if we want to attract time that people want to trade between them, so the people that want to create a time bank can do that and can facilitate that within the system, that they have that ability, but not necessarily everybody has to participate. And for those people that want to barter and they want to trade, and they say, I'll trade you my lawnmower for that couch, that you can record that transaction, or effectively like create the circumstances that people can facilitate those type of situations. They can do that too.
Yes.
But the fact that it's there makes it useful.
Yes. And
what it basically,
it's all being recorded.
Go ahead, Trudy.
And again, it's all transactions are honored by a record, and it's not just so then that's contributing to the history of the community, and also
and the reputation.
There's metrics. Part of the app is to keep track of how many transactions, what's the average dollar value, things like that, and there will be reports to the community. A beneficiary of every transaction is the community. The community's wallet receives transaction fees for every transaction. So that ends up being a way that the community can then turn back around and say, well, now we've accumulated quite a bit of value in our community account. How are we going to distribute this back to the community? Are we going to give rewards to people who are really in there working hard? Are we going to spend some of it on a party? There's the community wallet is building, accumulating value through the transactions, and so it behooves the administrators of the community to support a lot of good transactions and interactions and business development within the community.
And two, what quickly happens after that is that you start to build a directory of products and services offered. And so, yes, it might be something that, you know, you wouldn't have thought before to place value on, like going and spending an hour with a child or someone with Down syndrome. But now you're like, well, I mean, if you look at the millennial market, which is everybody's target market, because let's face it, in marketing, you cycle in and you cycle out. Everybody's got to die sometime. So you want that younger market. And one of the things that the younger market values extremely is experiences. So this not only opens up the door for, you know, a whole different, you know, type of thinking about services, but it also lets other people know, well, hey, I've got this experience to offer. Maybe somebody will want it, maybe they won't, but at least I can offer it out there and just see. Then you've got a directory of all that too.
Wonderful. All right, I'm going to let Ken introduce himself. Ken, you want to unmute, or do you need me to unmute you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. There we go.
This is the first time I use this thing, actually, so hope you guys can hear me okay.
Sound great.
Hear you great.
Yeah, sure, Mike. I go by Ken Code, and I've been in the blockchain space for over 5 years now or so. And we specialize in apps as well, mainly e-commerce and brick and mortar apps, financial related stuff for point of sale systems, mobile wallets, stealth transactions, barter decks, just like basically anything that's kind of in this space. We've launched apps kind of related to it. So all of our stuff is kept on GitHub. It's all FOSS, of course, free and open source software. Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of stuff for a lot of years. It's just kind of, you mentioned Acapulco a little while ago, Mike, and how like it's going as far as acceptance goes here. Acapulco, we have about 18 merchants, I think, right now in Acapulco. We've got on our Pompeii point of sale systems. So it's a free point of sale app that merchants just download to their Android devices, and it lets them accept all the top cryptos for free. And basically, so the 18 businesses I think that are in Acapulco right now is a pretty good start. But we just launched, we just started marketing like last week. So now it's going to pretty much explode from here, because we have flyer runners, is what we call them. It's basically these computer science majors that are well connected in the community, and they take the Pompeii flyers to all the business owners around Acapulco. And so now we're also working with the director of tourism here too, and he started up an initiative in Acapulco called Cryptopulco. It's CRI though. So you guys are probably thinking, oh, wait a minute, didn't Jeff come up with that term? And I'm like, well, yeah, technically he did. And we talked to him about that, so it's cool. But we actually just made it in Spanish, though. We used CRI for Cryptopulco. But anyways, the director of tourism used that on their Facebook thing and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So we've been kind of leveraging his, I don't know, power, I guess you could say, whatever, but in the community, you know, to get the word out to more businesses, so they can start learning about what is crypto. Like, why should I use Bitcoin and Dash and BitShares and Litecoin and all these different coins and stuff. And so now we're going to start doing workshops and stuff in the area too. We've got an office lined up, and yeah, it's growing from here. So the Pompeii point of sale software, for example, it's in 104 languages though, and it supports all the top cryptos, and it's being rolled out worldwide. There's a pretty large, there's like 80 ambassadors for Pompeii around the world too. So it's getting pretty big in Russia, South Africa, and now Acapulco. It's huge in Venezuela. Yeah, there's a bunch of countries that are doing better than the English-speaking countries for the most part, which is kind of funny because, like, you would think that the people that are already into crypto would be like jumping all over this, but it's the third, I hate to call them third world countries, but whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like Venezuela and the people that are on the bottom, those are the guys that are accepting cryptos more than anybody from like what I've seen. And now you've got businesses creating their own tokens and getting those traded. We've got a DEX bot that helps them to create liquidity in their coins. Actually, some employers now are starting to pay part of this employees' salaries in crypto, which is pretty cool. And they're also doing crypto pensions and crypto bonuses for their employees. So that's getting the crypto into the local economies, you know what I mean? Like in Acapulco, for example, now those employees can go out and spend their crypto at the businesses like in Acapulco, for example, that are already using Pompeii. So hotels and restaurants, and I think there's at least 6 nightclubs here that have Pompeii. So yeah, this is a grassroots effort, you know. We're just trying to just keep it going and just educate and do these workshops now, and